All right, very early this morning, WoWhead posted an article. How good are the monk hero talent tier sets in the War Within Season 3? And so naturally, I'm going to kind of like look at what Sinzhu has written and talk about it. I want to talk about things I agree with, maybe things I disagree with, maybe some things I feel like were missed. Overall, I've already read through this like 2 or 3 times. I think almost everything was nailed on the head. I think Sinzhu did a very good job kind of with this write-up. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's easy to digest, big kudos. But I also want to reference just some stuff on PTR that I can show off that might kind of build more background off of this article. So let's dive in. Now, I'll leave this down below, so anyone who wants to read it, the link will be in the description below, so feel free. They basically break down Master of Harmony versus Shado-pan, the pros, the cons, everything right, everything wrong, and then they make a final kind of analysis comparing the two. I'm not going to spend too long on this because I've already beaten the tier set horse to death with Monk, but I think there's some interesting things to kind of point out and just keep in mind here. So first things first, the way that the 2 and 4 set works for Master of Harmony is that by gaining Vitality, which is whenever you take damage or you heal, you have a chance to gain a buff called Potential Energy, which will proc a thing called Harmonic Surge, which will deal nature damage split among all nearby enemies, and it'll heal nearby allies. The 4 set greatly empowers this, allowing you to have control by whenever you cast Celestial Brew or Celestial Infusion. It guarantees you to gain 2 stacks of this potential energy, and it's not random anymore. Now, personally, I wish that Sinzhu talked about this in the article, but I think the feedback loop, disregarding tuning entirely, I think the feedback loop for this tier set's actually really good. I think it's interesting that you gain Vitality by taking damage and dealing damage, then you cast Celestial Brew, and then that Harmonic Surge damage, or I guess the potential energy buff, will either help you kind of dispatch that Vitality buff off of you onto your enemies quicker because of the damage it's dealing in an AoE situation, or I like that if you happen to get rid of that Vitality quickly, you now have a quicker accumulation of Vitality with the Harmonic Surge damage. And so you have this nice little feedback loop where you're constantly getting like little mini damage gains, and your damage profile is very kind of stagnant and it's consistent. Where Shado-pan is, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is very bursty. I think the feedback loop here is really good. And they talk about this later in the article, that it's an interesting concept and it adds a little bit of like group utility, though the tuning is a little low. So a couple things to keep in mind that Sinzhu talks about in this article is that the potential energy buff, which is what's proccing off of either casting Celestial Brew from your 4 set or by taking or I guess gaining Vitality with your 2 set, the potential energy buff lasts for 30 seconds and it stacks up to 6 times. Now the practice is going to be to make sure you're using these charges as fast as possible. There are times where you will get to 6 stacks really quickly. Let's say you're in an AoE pull. It's going to be hard for me to show here, but basically you have 2 charges of Celestial Brew. So I can pop Celestial Brew, here's a stack. I can pop it again, there's another stack. I can Black Axe Brew reset and get it again, which is another stack. Now the problem with this is, now I'm capped, so any Vitality I gain before I cast Tiger Palm is going to get munched. It's going to get eaten up. It's not going to exist. It might refresh this duration back to 30 seconds, but it's not going to give me another stack, which means I'm going to lose out on that potential damage. So this is problematic. This doesn't happen often. I'm not going to say that this is like every pull or every other pull, but there have been some times in dungeons that I've done testing where I hit 6 stacks pretty quickly because of a lot of different factors. Large pull, maybe we're in a lust window. I'm also going to be taking a lot of damage, so I'm going Celestial Brew into a Black Axe Brew reset fairly quickly before I can really sink my teeth into getting a Tiger Palm out. It's rare, but it does happen. So I think Blizzard could make an adjustment on this. I think they can either remove the cap or like cap it at maybe 8 or something. I'm not really sure, but that would be my guess. The problem is if you keep increasing the cap though, you're like the Brewmaster's gonna be in a deep hole anyways. To get rid of 6 stacks, it's a lot. There's no way you're Tiger Palming 6 times in a row to remove all these stacks. Especially before casting Celestial Brew again. So ideally you play around no more than like 3 stacks so that you never actually approach that cap. So that's a little unfortunate. Now, one other thing that they mention is that the Harmonic Surge damage, while being tied to Tiger Palm, does not benefit from any of the Tiger Palm modifiers. So things like Blackout Combo, Face Palm, Counter Strike. These do not affect your tier set at all. Your tier set is completely contingent on your current attack power, which is based off of things like Mastery and Agility. And like the tier set states, but just in case you aren't aware, it can proc off of Celestial Fusion as well. So if I swap to this talent and I pop Celestial Infusion, you're going to see I'm also gaining the potential energy buff. So it does work with both. Which one you want to play, I think really comes down to your the healer you're playing with, the comp you're playing with, the level of content you're playing in. There's a lot of different factors, but you can play either one. And the last thing to kind of note about it is that the healing can target pets and guardians. Luckily, there is a 40-yard range on Harmonic Surge's healing, and it does prefer to target injured players, so it shouldn't be an issue, but there is a chance where you're playing with a marksman hunter or you're running into a new pole and you go to hit your Tiger Palm to consume the stack, that that hunter who's way far out or whatever DPS is trailing behind might not get healed. So that is kind of a small problem, but I don't think it's really anything to worry about. The big problem, though, with the healing, and this is pointed out in the article, is that the Harmonic Surge healing is actually really, really, really low, less than 1% of a Brewmaster's health. So even that we're getting random bursts of this healing, it's very rarely impactful and will never actually save anyone's life. Now, there is some times where it does feel nice to have. Going into a fight like Swamp Face, where it's like fairly just a triage encounter, makes this tier set impactful, but there aren't many instances or bosses where that healing on your group is actually going to make or break the poll's success rate. So you can't like rely on the Brewmaster's group healing to actually keep you alive through a fight. It's just like a nice little bonus. It's going to make your healing meters look a little better as a Brewmaster specifically. It might take a little bit of pain off of your healer, like a very, very little amount, but it's unfortunately tuned extremely low for what they're trying to do with it. And so all in all, it seems like I like the feedback loop a lot. It seems like Sinzhu thinks it's a really good experimental set that could be further improved on, and it really comes down to appropriate tuning for like the healing potential as well as the guaranteed stacks. Now, one thing they were kind of talk about in their final review is comparing it to After the Wildfire, which is a talent of the Guardian Druid, which allows the Guardian Druid to have like fairly impactful group healing by spending rage. I think this could be even a potential talent in the future. Now, I have a little tinfoil hat where in the next expansion, they're going to expand on hero talent trees in attempting to incorporate some version of our tier set that we're having this season in the next expansion. But that's just a tinfoil hat. They probably won't do it. I'm normally wrong about these things, but I think it would be really cool, because I think it's like an easy transition. We're used to it. We just played with the tier set. Now we get to keep a version of it going into the next expansion at a smaller, value, and they can expand on the tree and give us a couple more passive nodes there as well. Anyways, let's talk about Shado-pan. So Shado-pan, there is a couple of things I want to talk about before I get into the article. There isn't much to be said here. Overall, it's a stronger set on paper. It's a little bit more intuitive. And it has, as Sinzhu pointed out, removes the risk of encouraging poor gameplay decisions, which I'll talk about in just a sec. But let's talk about the tier set first, because it states that it deals 20% more damage, and activating weapons of order grants 10 flurry strike charges that will trigger at 70% effectiveness. And the 2 set also indicates 150 energy spent. These are not true. They were implemented in the last PTR build. I thought it was going to get bug fixed in this most recent PTR build, but it still seems that the tier set is proccing at the old iteration's effectiveness, which is 100% effectiveness. Oh, I should probably swap it back to Shado-pan here. And it's still proccing flurry strikes at 120 energy instead of 150, which means that it's still overperforming by a great percentage. So when you see Shado-pan monks on the PTR up to this point, or maybe within the next couple days as well, don't take it at face value, because it's a little bug still. So what I mean is that you can see here I have spent 40 energy. I'm going to pop Weapons of Order. My next attack will trigger the flurry strikes, which is great. And now I'm going to cast Keg Smash, which will bring me to 120, which will proc my set again, even though it should be proccing at 150. So it is currently proccing still a little bit earlier, and it is still doing the same amount of damage regardless of how it's being procced, which means that it's not proccing at 70% effectiveness, but instead 100% based off of your 2 set. So Shado-pan is still doing a lot of damage from flurry strikes. Now, of course, I didn't get a shadow proc, so it's going to look really low. Obviously, your damage is fairly contingent on that shadow damage, which I'll talk about it here shortly. So basically, it removes the risk, because what's kind of cool about this tier set is that the flurry strikes that get generated from proccing Weapons of Order or popping it will not overwrite or consume your current flurry strike charges. They're like a separate spell ID, basically. And so when you pop them, what's going to happen is that it's going to trigger a fully rammed flurry, set of flurry strikes And then when you eventually spend enough energy to proc it again, it's still going to have basically 10 stacks. So you're going to be set. So there's no way you can like accidentally munch them or use them at a wrong time. As someone who's been playing Shado-pan religiously for the last 2 seasons, there was never really a time you were thinking about these either, because you generally accumulate Flurry Strike charges well before you're going to proc it, but it does remove the risk of accidentally kind of kicking yourself in the knee with these charges. So it's good. Now, Sinzhu talks about as if it is this new updated tier set, which will be true, but as of right now, it's not working. It's actually better than this. It's doing 120 energy instead of 150, but it's going to take you about 4 keg smashes or 6 tiger palms, or additional like different variations of those. You're never obviously spamming 4 keg smashes in a row. It's not possible, and you're never going to hit 6 tiger palms in a row, like I said earlier. Just it's not energy efficient. But overall, it's like really good. There's not too many issues with it. You are benefiting from Against All Odds, which is an agility bonus that stacks up to 20 times. Up to this point in the expansion, you were never, ever, ever able to hit 20 stacks, because the way that it works is for each charge you kind of spend on Flurry Strikes, it ups your agility by 1. So this will stack up to 10, because you're expunging 10 stacks, and it lasts for 5 seconds, stacking up to 20 times. Now, we never understood why it stacked up to 20 times, because it was just impossible to do so. But Blizzard now has made it where you can. When you pop Weapons of Order, chances are you're going to also be able to spend close to your near 150 energy probably already. So you're going to then go from 10 stacks to 20 stacks, then maintain that. And if you can somehow, triple keg smash or something like within 5 seconds, you'll then extend that back to its full 5-second duration. And it's really good. It's really impactful. It makes you actually fairly tanky during Weapons of Order. And so the biggest complaint Sinzhu kind of points out, and it's something that I kind of never really thought about, but it makes a lot of sense, because I guess Master of Harmony doesn't really have that crazy of a defensive bonus, but the Shado-pan one doesn't have a defensive bonus at all. And the defensive bonus actually comes from the fact that you're going to be inside, or you're going to have more active Wisdom of the Wall buffs during your Weapons of Order window, which should in theory make you tankier, and you're going to have up to 20% agility for a handful of seconds as well, periodically throughout your Weapons of Order window. So that in itself actually makes you tanky. I think that was a very good analysis by them, and it's true. That is where the tankiness actually ends up coming from. In terms of feeling fun, the Shado-pan themed set bonuses deliver on one of the best experiences for Brewmasters by creating an intoxicating amount of potential damage to deliver on a semi-frequent basis. I actually fully agree with this. I believe that this tier set is like one of the best tier sets that Blizzard has made for Brewmaster in recent years, ever since like Keg of the Heavens. I think this tier set is going to feel really good for a lot of players to use. Now, I still have some issues with Flurry Strikes and how they operate. With how they register, when they register, there's chance you can accidentally not trigger them, which is a pretty massive damage loss, especially when your tier set is based around it. One minor change I'd like them to make is that Flurry Strikes will proc regardless, and it's just like a frontal channel in front of your character, instead of being this like you have to have a target in range of you, or a talent or a mob that has been in combat for a considerable amount of time, so that the in-game tick rate can understand that they're actually in combat with you, or you just don't proc it. Also, Press the Advantage is also like dead in the water at this point, because it can't even proc the tier set. So if you're playing Shado-pan, you cannot play Press the Advantage. If you do, you're not even wearing a tier set at that point. So overall, they are saying that as of right now, the clear winner is Shado-pan, and the clear loser is probably Master of Harmony. Now, I like Master of Harmony's feedback loop. I like Shado-pan's thematic sense as well. I think both tier sets are fun, and it's really coming down to tuning. There are still a few weeks left in PTR, and at any point, Blizzard can buff or nerf these tier sets or the class. We saw that in Season 2. There was a lot of buffs to specifically almost like Master of Harmony affecting talents and abilities. Shado-pan obviously still is really strong in like single target, but Master of Harmony is now kind of the staple for Mythic Plus, making them both competitive. So I wouldn't write off either of them yet. Shado-pan is overperforming. Master of Harmony is arguably underperforming, but with good tuning, they could actually make this work. Anyways, that is the Sinzhu's little write-up here. I thought it was really good, well written, and I think addressed a lot of the main kind of pros and cons, which I really, really enjoyed reading. I will leave this article down below, and there's also some other first impression sets or articles going around. Actually, I think this is pretty much all of them, outside of like, what class is not in here? Paladin? No, Paladin's there. There's 13 classes in the game, right? I'm like running through my head like every single class in spec and I can't think of any. Oh no, I'm dumb. It's because the monk one's not here because I'm in the monk one. Jesus Christ. Okay. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. And I'm looking forward to reading your comments and doing some more PTR testing in future weeks. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.